All right, here I'm redoing these videos. I made a set and then I decided I needed to redo it. So here's the worksheet that you're going to have uh, for WA2. Fill it out. Basically, in the previous video when I went through 7 and actually in week 6, 5, and 6 as well, the PowerPoints kind of tell you what you need to put in here. And you're going to be crossing the certain males, all right, that's in the PowerPoints, with certain females, and some will be wild type, some will be these special flies for complementation. And you're going to run it in the software, and you're going to get numbers. Now, I want you to do this more than once, and I elaborated on that in week 7, and I think I mentioned it in 5 and 6 as well. But you really ought to do it more than once, because and you're allowed to add those together, because the more you do it, the closer you get to the correct answer. The software has some variability, and it can vary outside the normal range, so that you occasionally can get a negative answer or a positive answer if it's supposed to be negative. And that's allowed because that's what you would see in the real world. So, but if you do it multiple times, on average, you're going to get the right answer. So in this worksheet, all right, you put in your phenotypes that get, these are your results, all right? So you're going to say, here are my parents, and this is my F1, and here are your numbers you're going to get, all right? You're going to get certain phenotypes, all right? And here are the males and females for whatever phenotypes you have, and you get your totals. Now, if you remember in one of the other videos, and this is where I'm going to make an additional video where I go back and pull out the slides from previous ones and put them kind of together to show you what goes in here. You're going to get totals here, and you're going to do what? You're going to do chi-squared, all right? And you're going to put your answers there. Now, I'm actually telling you that in the software, if you look around, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but if you look around in the software, as in the FlyGene software that you're using online, they can do chi-squared for you, all right? So this is not hard at all. We used to make everybody do it by hand. I would still, let me be very clear then. You need to know how to do it by hand, and I made videos for you, and they're going to, at the very least, be quiz questions where you're going to have to do chi-squared by hand. So you might as well, especially if you combine them, you're going to have to kind of do it by hand, but you could do it just once in the software and it'll give you an answer, and you'd put your answers here, and if it's correct, you'll do fine. But if you do it multiple times, it's one of the reasons I say you really ought to do it multiple times, add the numbers, do your own chi-squared. But however you choose to do it, I mean, you want to save some time, and you think that you can get away with it, I understand, but you know, be careful. You need to know, of course, what is a good answer and what is a bad answer. What are you expecting here? You are expecting what? What did I show you in week 7 slides? Well, you're expecting, if I'm remembering the last set of slides correct, this was a female and a male, and I believe this was wild, and these were the mutants. But the idea was all of your offspring, no, that was a different one, sorry. They were both mutants, but all of your offspring are wild type. All right, so what do you expect you would get here? All right, so go back and look at those slides again, and know what you were doing here. Let's see, that is your allelic inheritance cross 1. See, they've changed the names of these. That's why I'm not sure. Man, no, I want complementation cross. Where do we have complement? That should be the name. Mapping cross, okay. See, they changed the names on these for me. But I will go through it. Once you figure out what to put in here, it really is easy. You just put the right thing in here, find out what the allelic inheritance cross is, you put it into the software, you get your results, you put them in here, you get your totals here, and you do chi-squared. So your allelic inheritance cross 2, all right, you do that one, put it in here, get your totals, and you're good. All right, now what should you do? Let's go over the conclusions of cross 1. So the way you state this, so your conclusions, you must state this using the terms or terms similar to this, having to do with your hypothesis and your null hypothesis. All right, your hypothesis will be kind of what you want to happen, and your null is the opposite of that, or kind of like you put not in front of it. And it's kind of tricky to do this. Sometimes you can do this where you make your hypothesis the thing you don't want, and sometimes it's easier to do it that way. It is not incorrect to do it either way. You can take your numbers and you can say, let's say I'm expecting all wild type here. I can make my hypothesis to be all wild type, and that's my hypothesis. That's all I'm going to get. And that would mean your null hypothesis is that you're not going to get any wild type. So one of them, it's kind of an all or none thing. I'm either going to get all wild type or I'm going to get no wild type. But then that doesn't matter. What if you get some wild type? That wouldn't fit with this particular way of stating your hypothesis. If you say, I am doing my hypothesis is that I get all wild type, then anything else, all right, is your null. And so the only way to, and remember, you never prove your hypothesis. It would support your hypothesis if you get all wild type. Now, you may not. And if that's the case, even though if you just get one, then you would have to reject your hypothesis and accept your null hypothesis because you did not get all wild type. So how you state this thing is very important. You could switch this, all right, and you could say my null hypothesis is I get no, you wouldn't say it that way. You could say your hypothesis is that I do not get 100% wild type. All right, so that would be your hypothesis. Your hypothesis is I don't think I'm going to get 100% wild type. So your null hypothesis then is the opposite of that, and it's that you get exactly 100%. And now that one would be a little different. If you got just one, or if you got none, you would still support your hypothesis. So realize how you state it, and I hope I'm saying this clear enough for you to understand that depending on how you state your hypothesis, either you make it like an all or nothing something, that might not be a good way to do it. Maybe you just state one where I get nothing but wild type. That's my hypothesis. And then if you get anything else, you have to reject it. You could get one fly and you have to reject it. But then you could also say, as your hypothesis is that I am not going to get 100%. And that means you could get one, or you could get none, non-wild type. And you would be able to accept your null, and you would have to reject your hypothesis. And sometimes one is better than the other depending on the numbers you get and depending on what you want to find. There are ways to kind of, cheat with statistics in a way. And one of the ways you can do that is by stating your hypothesis or null hypothesis in a very ambiguous way. And people are very guilty of that, especially in the social sciences. It's very easy to state a really convoluted hypothesis and null hypothesis. All right, so we move on. You need to find out what each of these are, and I'm just going to have to make an entire video on what goes here, what goes here, what goes here, and what goes here, because the terms allelic inheritance is a bit ambiguous. The fly-based candidate, what is your phenotype, all right, the one that was assigned, and candidate gene location, all right, found from your research, all right, you need to state that there. And you need to know your marker genes, chromosome and location, and this is going to be, well, they're calling it mapping cross here, so you need to know what goes in each of these, all right, and the location of your marker gene. And then you need to run these again and get your total progeny, your recombinant. Now here's the one where when you're off a little, all right, you're expecting like 100% of something, kind of like up here in the first ones. Well, remember, because of that crossing over, which I've made videos for you that explain, you know, these things move around a little, and when they cross over, you don't get the frequency you're expecting. You don't get the numbers you're expecting. And so you calculate these oddballs, the ones that, well, if it worked really the way Mendel said, I shouldn't get these. But you do get these, and you have to figure out how many of those you get, and that's going to tell you something about the distance between these genes. And that's what we're trying to do here. You're going to get the ones that you expect, but that you're going to get a couple, you know, that you don't expect in here, and those are the ones that are your recombinant frequencies, and this is where you calculate that. And you're going to do this for your mapping cross, and you're going to do your chi-squared analysis here, all right? And like I said, the computer will do this for you. I don't recommend to do that, and mainly I also recommend you using larger numbers. The more flies, the better. The closer you will to the theoretical correct answer. And of course, you'll end up with a number, and you'll have to figure out on your own, all right, the what this magic number is that you're trying to get. Actually, you want to keep it below, all right, if what? If you want to accept your hypothesis, and above if you're going to reject. Okay, so remember, or the way you state this is you got if you get 0, you got exactly what you're expecting. All right, if your chi-square number, if this comes out to be exactly 0, then you got no change. There was no change in anything. You got exactly what you were expecting. If you go over this magic number, you got something other than what you were expecting. And when you understand this concept, then you understand how to state your null hypothesis, or your hypothesis. Either way, whichever way you're going to state it, it's going to be based on what the idea here is. Are we exactly on a number? Are we near a number? Or are we too far away from a number? So the chi-square is based on, we get a number and we're expecting 0. Maybe we are expecting there to be none of this other type of organism, this phenotype to show up. How many can we get and still say, well, it's close enough? So if we get 10 out of 1,000, is that too many for us to say to say what we want to say, to accept our hypothesis? Or if we go over, if maybe the magic number is 9, well, 10 would be over, and we would have to say, nope, this obviously isn't working the way we thought it was according to the statistics. If we get 8, then you can say, well, it's high, but it's still within the range of me being able to say that we didn't get any, even though to me that's where you're cheating. It's like, no, you got some. That's not right. But still, the chi-square would say, well, you're close enough. But really what we want to be doing here is we're going to predict how many of these recombinants you have, and did we get enough of them, did we get within a range for us to say that, yeah, we're getting numbers that maybe we're expecting 8. Did we get close enough to 8? All right, so it's not 0 usually. It's usually going to be something like that number that we're expecting to get. If the gene is located where we think it is and there's recombination, you might be expecting like 8, all right, and we got 9. Well, you know, 1 off is probably going to work, and if you do the statistics, it's probably going to be well below your magic number here. Now, the 8 and 9 are not your magic number here. That has to do with looking it up on that table. But just being 1 off, you're probably safe no matter what size you used, other than maybe 5 or less. 1 would be a pretty big number to have be off if you're only using 5 flies. That's why I want you to use lots of flies, because you'll be allowed to be off by some and still be able to get a legitimate answer. All right, I hope this helped a little. When you come down here to the last one, it's the same idea. These are the mapping crosses. All right, and you have your mapping cross 3. You have to know what goes in, and I'm going to make a whole different video on that. But when you get through this, I'm going to post this, and if you understand this, your mapping crosses, you're fine to go. You can just go and get working on this, put it into the software. If you aren't sure what we're talking about with mapping crosses, then you need to wait for the next video that I'm making. All right, let's see. Yeah, we're done there.